Hello, and welcome back to Misty Island. In the last episode, Krudius and the others finally figured out a good theory where Iveria Sagelight could be. They believe that she is the rabbit that lives at the back of the Whitane household. The rabbit that has mysteriously gone untouched by the wolves on the island. And they also had a chat with Caroline, who was previously one of those wolves, and she confirmed that the wolves knew not to get close to that rabbit. Something is wrong with it, and Krudius thinks that, well, it's a magic user. So let's see what happens when they try to dispel the curse on it. And Audrey also told them a little bit more about what happened when she met Agreth and the curses cast on James and Eugene. So Krudius also thinks that once Iveria is back, he might be able to do something to help with her help as well. So they have all arrived here to the Whitane house, and they are of course gonna start by heading into the house. And Caroline has brought her little boys with her. She wasn't comfortable leaving them in the house with James the way he is currently. So of course, being in the house, they can notice that it's completely empty. They're gonna keep walking into the kitchen here. And they can all see through the windows that the family is outside in the garden. The little girls are playing with each other, and Norma and Fred are apparently working on the garden plot here. So Krudius is gonna walk up to Norma and explain to her what they're doing here and about their theories. So Krudius is gonna tell Norma that they have figured out that the rabbit is probably Iveria, and Norma is thrilled to hear that. She tells him that the rabbit appeared one day eating up my vegetables, and since I was desperately lonely at that point, I figured that I could use the company. So I built a pen and kept the rabbit, and of course I had no idea who it was. Please go ahead and see what you can do for her. So yes, Krudius is gonna go ahead and walk into the rabbit pen here. And of course all of them are coming up here to see what Krudius is gonna do. They don't want to miss this. So since he can't really cast a spell on the rabbit itself, I'm gonna do the same trick again, that I am having him cast the Clinius Corpus. And that's of course gonna be the Purgo Magnus spell. And from the rabbit, a beautiful witch is transformed, and Krudius is sort of speechless seeing her, and his heart starts to beat a little bit faster than before. And with a big smile, Iveria walks up to Krudius and wraps him in a very, very warm embrace. And again, Krudius is pretty taken aback by this, but he's also pretty flustered, pretty nervous about whatever is going on here. And she tells him, "You clever, clever man, you did it. You helped everyone." And Krudius realizes that even though Iveria's been a rabbit, she's probably been aware of her surroundings, and she's been able to see as he's been moving around a lot, and hear probably also what's been going on inside the house, and she probably knows more than he thought she would. So Krudius is left pretty much speechless as Iveria is gonna walk up here and reunite also with the others, her friends that's been missing her, of course, all of them here. And Roger is gonna walk up to Krudius and sort of give him a hard time. You know, what's with those rosy cheeks? Are you alright? That was a very warm hug, wasn't it? And Krudius is waving him off, not sure really what he should say. Well, in the end, he doesn't really have to say much, because Iveria is calling everyone into the living room, that they should probably catch up and share knowledge, and she can let them know as much as she knows. So they've all gathered here in the living room to share knowledge, and everyone except the young children who are not interested in any of this, except Audrey, of course. She wouldn't leave Krudius alone, especially not now when he's suspiciously paying a little bit too much attention to this new witch in the corner here. So they start off by Krudius telling Iveria and the others about, what happened ever since he was transported onto this island and crash landed in the forest, and his work to break the curses on everyone, and how that has been going up until, well, this point when he also saved Iveria. And once that is all done, Iveria is telling them all about the story from her point of view. She tells them that she moved to the island 5 years ago to get away from her old life, and that as soon as she stepped foot on the island, she felt right at home at once. She quickly made friends with her neighbors. She met Caroline and her husband James, and also James' brother Richard, who was very friendly and often around. And it was through meeting Richard and befriending him that she eventually met Anora as well. And Anora, of course, another magic user. They quickly became best friends, and they spent a lot of time together over at the Crestgloom house. And this was, of course, when Audrey was a very, very young toddler. And from spending that much time at the Crestgloom house, she got to know Walter quite well as well, Anora's father. He still lived with the family at that point, and even though he lived there, Aigrith did not. She was actually living on her own in the fortress up at the top of the mountain, and she was rarely around. But of course, Iveria did have a run-in with Aigrith as well, and they took an instant dislike to one another. And Iveria can really testify that she is a horrible, selfish woman, and even before all of this happened, she was a tyrant. She says that she held the family in an iron grip, and it wasn't taking long before she realized that everyone was terrified of stepping a toe out of line and causing her anger. Of course, Anora and Richard had a lot of dreams. They wanted to travel the world, go on adventures, and of course Anora had her dreams of becoming a famous author as well. But of course Aigrith made all of that impossible, and eventually Richard had enough and confronted her about it. And ever since then, she was on the warpath. Anora told Iveria later that if she hadn't stepped in front of Richard at the last moment and protected him, something really, really bad would have happened. So, with Anora protecting Richard, Aigrith ended up retreating, but she didn't do so peacefully. She actually brought Audrey with her as hostage. So they all kind of turned to Audrey with questionable expressions. And Krudius says, "When you said that you were living with your grandmother, did you mean that you were doing so even before the mist came?" And she confirms it. She says that, yes, I was with Grandma. She didn't really like it with her. She wanted to go back to Mom and Dad, but she wasn't allowed to. So Iveria continues and says that Anora and Richard and Walter were doing everything that they could to plead with Aigrith to release Audrey, but she wouldn't move an inch. And that was when Anora found out that she was pregnant. And as the couple was starting to prepare for their new addition to the family, they were both terrified of what would happen to the baby. And they were fearing that, Aigrith would kidnap the new baby as well. So they started to devise a plan so that they would be able to escape. And Iveria was going to do everything she could to help. Eventually they decided on the night when it would all happen, and Walter was going to go up to the fortress and meet with Aigrith and pretend to be missing her and wanted to spend some time with her. And then in the middle of the night he would bring Audrey down to the docks where Iveria and Richard and Anora would be waiting so that they could leave the island on a prepared boat that was docked there. The plan was to throw up a temporary barrier around the island to prevent magic users from leaving the island so that the Crestglooms would have enough time to leave before Aigrith could chase them. It was difficult magic, but both Anora and Iveria thought that they would be able to do it together as long as they concentrated really hard. But unfortunately, things didn't go according to plan. Before they even had time to travel to the docks, Aigrith showed up at the Crestgloom house, having seen through Walter's attempts. Iveria and Anora managed to temporarily contain her as they ran all they could down to the waters. They had to abandon all of the bags that they had prepared just to get away from her. There was no time to make it to the docks, so they made it to the cliffs instead, and from there Iveria flew on her broomstick to the docks, took the boat and drove it all the way to the cliffs. When she arrived, she saw that Walter and Audrey had made their way down as well and had joined the others. So Iveria made it onto shore and joined Anora as they started to cast a spell that would contain Aigrith on the island. But that was when Aigrith appeared as well, and she also started to chant a spell. This spell was also affecting the surroundings of the island. A big thunderstorm was coming, and all of the different spells started to blend into one another, causing a big wave of mist to travel in and surround the island. All of the spells and the magic went haywire and started to feed off one another. It was like something Iveria had never seen or heard of before. Despite all this, it seemed that the spell that they had cast around the island had worked, and Anora was just about to drink the Witch Begone E potion that they had prepared to not be a magic user anymore and to be able to escape the island. But before she could do so, lightning struck from the sky and hit both her, Richard and Walter, felling them all three to the ground. And of course, they didn't survive that. Before Iveria could do anything, she shrunk into a rabbit, completely helpless. And before she knew it, she was being chased by wolves. But as Iveria is saying this, Audrey exclaims, "You're lying! Grandpa's not dead. He's alive. He's with Grandma." And everyone turns to Audrey in disbelief at this news. And this is where we will leave them for this time.